In today's podcast, you'll learn different uses of the word bear. So bear with us as we look at some expressions and collocations with the word bear. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with more than 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take it to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm feeling fine. I'm fine. I've had a bit of an adventurous last couple of weeks trying to find out what was wrong with me. I couldn't pee.
I could tell you what's wrong with you.
Yeah. You I didn't need a doctor for that, but eventually I got to the bottom of it. Well, not exactly the bottom, around the other side.
The front of it. You got to the front of it.
Yeah. I wasn't able to pee for a few days. I had a problem with some kidney stones. I don't know if any listeners have ever had it. Very painful. But I'm all right now. In fact, the last podcast we recorded, I was suffering a bit from the kidney stones. So if my voice sounded a bit strange, even worse than normal in that episode, that's the reason why. Hopefully, I'm speaking like my old self again.
I don't think anybody noticed, Reza. So, what's first this week?
Well, let's start with some feedback. It's an email, and it's from Mati from Cartagena in Murcia. Shall I read?
Yes, why don't you go ahead and read it, Reza?
Okay. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for all the work you do. Well, thanks very much, Matty.
Thank you.
Thanks to you, she says, I'm one more member of the AIRC community. That's AIRC, not alcoholic. AIRC, Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig. If you listen obsessively, you're an AIRC. I'll go on. Due to the fact I work as a tourist guide, I find speaking easy. And as I wanted to keep my writing skills, I wrote this email. However, my target nowadays is to reach a C1 level in every task, but I need discipline. When she says every task, I think she probably means in every skill, reading, writing, speaking, and listening. By the way, you are invited to come to the city if you have time. Having the opportunity to taste a caldero, to discover what is an asiático, to find out what is an explorador, and to enjoy our heritage.
Do you know those words? Caldero is something to do with a volcano, isn't it?
It might be, I don't know. It sounds familiar as something edible. I think you can eat a caldero, can you? I'm not sure.
Asiatico, Asian food, perhaps?
Yeah, I wouldn't eat an asiatico, not a person. What do you think it is? Yeah, something Asian to eat? But what's it doing in Murcia?
Don't know. We'll have to go to Murcia and let Mati explain it to us because she's a tour guide. She can probably take us to some wonderful places to taste those dishes, but I have no idea what they are.
I know what an explorador is, like Christopher Columbus, but I doubt you can find him in Murcia today. Well, let's find out what an explorador is as well. Okay, let's go on. I recently traveled to Valencia to visit my relatives, and during the journey, I listened to some podcasts related to music. Since then, I've been thinking about if Reza could play a piece of music with his violin. I'm sure that it will be a lovely present for all the listeners. Lovely present, I'm not sure. It may be a torment, Matty. You haven't heard me play. We might lose most of our listeners. What do you think, Craig?
Did you bring your violin to play?
I haven't got it with me. Sorry, Matty. But I might be doing you a favor, really. I'm not very good.
He's very modest. I've heard Reza play. He's very good.
No, very rusty. Rusty means I haven't done it in a long time. Oof, not good. Oh, she has a little extra bit. She wrote PD, but she's thinking Spanish. In English, we write PS, postscript. I hope not to have many mistakes. It is difficult to write when you have a cat messing around the computer. Cheers and have a nice week.
A catastrophe.
Yeah.
She's not from Catalonia. Is she
Oh, dear, oh, dear.
One thing, Matti, first of all, thank you for your email. We will definitely look you up, which means come and see you, knock on your door if we find ourselves in Murcia. Thank you for the invitation. And if you are practicing your writing, hopefully you've listened to last week's podcast, episode 506, in which we specifically spoke about and focused on how to improve your writing in English. So if you haven't heard that, check it out.
Okay, Craig, shall we get down to our main business today? Let's talk about expressions with bear, B-E-A-R, bear.
Yes, let's talk about bear. But before we do, please bear with us because... Did you see what I did there? Please bear with us because we want to tell you about how you can improve your English by studying personally with us. Now, that doesn't mean that we will be coming to your house and knocking on your door, but through the magic of the internet, we can help you improve your English. Reza, how do you do that?
Well, through the magic of internet, we can have a one-to-one class via something like Zoom or Skype or whatever you prefer. And since it's one-to-one, we can tailor-make, that means refine the class the way you want it. You might need to concentrate more on reading or perhaps grammar or listening or speaking or writing, whatever, or a little bit of a mixture. It's up to you. And perhaps you might need to prepare for a specific exam and you don't have much time to do it. And one-to-one on your own might be the best answer for you. If you're interested, please get in touch with me. It's through my email, belfastreza@gmail.com. Though I have to say, you may have to be patient because at the moment I'm very busy and you may have to wait a little while because I don't have any free time right now, but I'm sure I will pretty soon.
And if you want to focus on your speaking, obviously not something for Matti because she speaks English regularly, being a tour guide. But if you don't have the opportunity of speaking English regularly and you want to become more fluent, more comfortable, less shy when you're speaking English, why not join one of my conversation groups? Again, over the internet, we get together using Zoom and we spend time speaking about interesting topics, having discussions, debates, role plays, presentations, etc. If you'd like more information, my email address is Craig, C-R-A-I-G, @inglespodcast.com, and you can find more information on the website englishcraig.com. So let's look at bear. Now, bear as a noun, B-E-A-R, I'm sure you know is a big, hairy animal. We've got black bears, we've got brown bears, we've got polar bears that are white. But bear is also a verb, isn't it, Reza?
Yes, to bear means to more or less, the general meaning is to carry something, to carry. To bear is to carry. But Craig, what about B-A-R-E?
Also a verb and exactly the same pronunciation, different spelling, B-A-R-E. That means naked, no clothes. Reza showed me his bare chest, for example.
Phew, I thought you were going to say something else.
I was. I changed my mind at the last minute. So bare, B-A-R-E, means naked, without clothes, or without a covering, for example.
So it can be an adjective or a verb. I could say that I was going to bear, B-A-R-E, but as a verb, I was going to bare my chest to Craig. That's to show it to him. Or I wanted to show Craig my bare chest as an adjective. So the same word can be a verb or an adjective. A bare chest or to bare your chest, for example.
Maybe it's me, but when I hear somebody say, I made this with my bare hands, obviously that's B-A-R-E, but I don't know why. Maybe it's only me. I just think of somebody with hands that are really, really hairy, like a bear. So I made this with my bare hands. I've got hands like a bear, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. Anyway, women bear children, don't they? That's the B-E-A-R. Now, that's what we're focusing on today, the use of B-E-A-R, bear children, to carry children. They give birth to children. Now, there's some confusion with the expression born. Where were you born? I was born. Sometimes people forget the was. They forget the auxiliary verb. They forget that it's from the verb to bear a child. And when we say I was born, for example, I was born in London, we're using the passive form of the verb to bear, B-E-A-R. So when you're using that, don't forget that verb to be. Where were you born? I was born, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, and born, because it's passive, you need to think about the grammatical form when it's future, past, etc. For example, if a woman is pregnant, I might ask her when the baby will be born. Don't forget that be. It's not will born, it's will be born. So all of the forms you've got to remember need to be formed as passive verbs. Just a little reminder about passive verbs. You can find out more about passive verbs in other episodes, but you can say who's responsible for an action with a passive verb. For example, I could say to you, my birthday was organized by Craig. He wanted to surprise me. It was organized by Craig. That's a passive verb, was organized. In theory, grammatically, you could say, I was born by my mother. She did it, not me. She's the one who had the baby. But of course, that would be ridiculous because it's so superfluous. It's obvious. No one else in the world can bear you except your mother. So it would be ridiculous to say I was born by my mother.
Not by my father.
Not by my father, not by my friends. But the grammatical possibility exists theoretically, but it would be absurd, of course.
Exactly. So let's give you an example with the verb to bear. After 9 months of pregnancy, Maria was happy to finally bear a healthy child. You can see all of these examples and the notes to this podcast on the website. Go to inglespodcast.com/507. Now, bear, to bear, B-E-A-R, is an irregular verb. So bear is the infinitive, bore, B-O-R-E, the second form, past simple, and born, B-O-R-N, that's the third form of the verb. So an irregular verb, bear, bore, born. Now, we've got some expressions for you, all using the verb to bear. The first one on our list is grin and bear it. Grin and bear it. Grin, G-R-I-N, another verb, means to smile. To smile very broadly, not showing your teeth. It's usually like a smile without showing your teeth, to grin.
Yeah, for me, more than anything, a grin is like a stupid smile. It's stupid. It might even be to irritate someone, or looking at it, you just find it irritating. The kind of smile that someone has on their face when you look at it and think, that's irritating. That's a grin, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So to grin and bear it means to endure or suffer a difficult or maybe unpleasant situation with a smile. For example, it's a tough task, it's a difficult thing, but we'll have to grin and bear it. We'll have to accept it. Now, you can use this ironically. For example, Reza, when we have coffee today, we've got some homemade cupcakes with our coffee. Now, I know that's going to be difficult for you to accept, but you'll just have to grin and bear it and eat the homemade cupcakes.
Well, it won't be easy, but yes, I'll just have to do it for you because you insist.
Grin and bear it.
Craig, do you want me to explain the next one?
Yes, why not? I'll bear with you.
Hold on a minute. Bear with me.
Are you about to fart?
No, here it comes. To be patient or tolerate a situation. So I asked Craig to bear with me. I made him wait. He had to be patient. So if you have to bear with someone, you have to wait, be patient, Maybe it's just a question of time, or you may have to be patient in the sense that they're very irritating or they're not being very helpful in doing what they're supposed to be doing. So bear with me there when I said it to Craig meant just give me a few seconds to get ready. I'll give you another example. Bear with me while I find the information you requested. Because I've got to go to the computer, I've got to go to all the different files and look around. It's going to take me a while. So bear with me while I find the information, please.
And it's a nice expression to use, isn't it? Because you might just say to someone who's waiting for you to do something, oh, wait a minute, hold on, can you wait? But to say, could you bear with me for a moment is much more polite. It means wait, but it's much more formal and much more polite, especially if you are in the service industry. Reza, do you remember last time you had a really bad hangover? You had a lot to drink and you woke up the next day. How did you feel?
Well, I'm not sure about the last time, but I certainly remember the worst time in my life. It was at a wedding in Poland, actually.
Ah, the vodka story.
The vodka story, yeah. I don't know how much vodka I had drunk. And it's a drink which I'd never really drunk before. So I felt terrible for about 2 days afterwards. But the next day I woke up, the first day, I was really bad. I was like a bear with a sore head. A bear with a sore head. So there we are talking about the animal. If you are like a bear with a sore head, you're in a bad mood or you're easily irritated, because apparently bears do have bad moods. There are times when bears are very irritated and you really don't want to irritate a bear anymore if it has a sore head. They're very grumpy. For example, I might say to you, don't talk to him right now. He's like a bear with a sore head. He was at a Polish wedding and he drank too much vodka and now he's just grumpy. He's like a bear with a sore head.
Wasn't the story at the wedding where you had to drink a lot of small glasses of vodka frequently and most people were drinking water and you didn't know and you just drank vodka all the time?
Me and all the other British guests, there were quite a few there, we didn't realize. We thought, oh wow, you have to drink vodka. And then we realized too late that no, the Poles sometimes had water and pretended it was vodka. But for us, it was all too late when we discovered.
Remember that next time you're at a Polish wedding. Now, obviously, in that example, a bear with a sore head, we're using the noun there, so that's the hairy bear. Let's go back to the verb, because if you are like a bear with a sore head, like me in the morning, you don't want to annoy the bear or annoy the person in the bad mood. Otherwise, you will have to bear the brunt of their anger. So if you bear the brunt, BRUNT, of something, you endure the worst part of a difficult situation. Can you think of an example, Reza?
Yes, imagine there's an earthquake, a natural disaster, and the small towns near the epicenter bore the brunt of the earthquake. So the epicenter right in the middle, they're the towns which got totally destroyed, the towns which suffered most. They bore the brunt. They endured the worst part.
Another example, during the war, the people living near the border of the country bore the brunt of the missile attacks, for example. They got the worst of the difficult situation.
This is one of these expressions which are very nice to know, because the word brunt, as far as I know, isn't used in any other expression.
I don't know what it means.
Yeah, me neither.
But I know the expression, but I don't know what brunt is.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? One of those expressions that a word appears and it's very commonly used, but only in that expression, in nothing else. Yeah, you will never hear the word brunt in any other expression, but you will hear it in the expression bear the brunt, and it's quite a common expression.
So bear this in mind. Learn words with their collocations. Learn expressions as pieces or chunks of language, like bear in mind. For example, bear in mind means to remember something or to take something into consideration, to keep it in mind. For example, when making decisions, always bear in mind the possible consequences. Remember it. Don't forget. Bear in mind.
Our next chunk of language, or collocation we could say, is always in a negative form. Can't bear the sight of something. Sight, S-I-G-H-T, when you see something. That means that you strongly dislike or you're simply unable to tolerate something. Craig, if I remember, there's some kind of insect that really bothers you, but I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Oh, I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I can't bear the sight of spiders. I hate spiders, especially the big hairy ones, so I can't bear the sight of them. They terrify me.
Why is that? Why can't you bear the sight of them?
Because when I was young, probably 7 or 8 years old, a spider in my house laid eggs in my pillowcase or bed. So I woke up in the middle of the night with lots of little spiders in the bed. And I've had a phobia ever since then. So I just don't know. I just hate spiders. They're creepy. They're horrible.
I can understand. It sounds awful. The idea of waking up literally surrounded by dozens and dozens of spiders. Oh, it is awful. It's the stuff of horror films, really.
I also once, when I was older, lived in a flat, in a very cheap flat with cockroaches. And one morning I woke up and there was a cockroach on the pillow, which is horrible. I mean, immediately I threw it to the floor and killed it. But cockroaches, I hate cockroaches, but not as much as spiders. I don't know why. It's the creepiness of them, the way they move their legs. Ooh, horrible.
You've really creeped me out now with the cockroach on the pillow. The idea that might that at some stage have been on your face and your nose? Did it try to get in your mouth? Oh, God, it's a horrible thought, isn't it?
I can't bear the sight of them.
A lot of people say they can't bear the sight of blood. That's a very common one, isn't it?
Yep.
People, when they see even a little spot of blood, they want to faint. They feel weak. They can't go to the doctors for injections and vaccinations because they can't bear the sight of blood.
In fact, I've been told many times by ladies in the past that they can't bear the sight of me.
Yes.
So it's not only animals.
It's another common one, isn't it? When you don't like someone, you tell them you can't bear the sight of them.
Get lost. I can't bear the sight of you. Moving on. Bear the load, L-O-A-D, or perhaps bear the burden, B-U-R-D-E-N. That's to carry a heavy responsibility or obligation. Can you think of an example?
What about this? As the team leader, he had to bear the burden of decision making. So it's not easy, and it's very important to make those decisions. Somebody has to do it. Somebody has to bear that burden, take the responsibility.
Yeah, it's kind of the idea that you're carrying something heavy on your shoulders, not literally, but this idea that you've got a lot of responsibility on your back, on your shoulders. You're bearing the load or bearing the burden for something.
Craig, what about the expression bear fruit? What do you understand by that one?
That would give some kind of positive result or positive outcome. For example, keep studying. If you're listening to this podcast, you want to improve your English, keep studying. Don't give up, because all of your hard work eventually will bear fruit in the end.
Or here's another one. The research project took years, but finally it began to bear fruit. It began to bear fruit. Finally, we saw results after all the efforts. And think about what happens with real fruit. It takes a while to grow. It doesn't just appear overnight. So the expression to bear fruit is to produce results, but always with the idea of it took time. Like fruit takes time to grow, with that kind of idea.
You can also bear witness to something. A witness is somebody who sees something and maybe will testify in court and say, yes, I saw the murder. I saw the person with the gun. I'm a witness to the murder. So if you bear witness to something, you are able to prove that something is true. For example, the spectators have borne witness to a new Olympic world record today. They've seen it. They know it's true. Another example, the riots in the street have borne witness to the unstable political situation. So there we're using the present perfect with the third form. The riots in the street have borne witness.
The next one, bear a cross, might be confused with bear a load or a burden, because as Craig explained, a burden, a load is something heavy on your back, and a cross as well. You can imagine, probably you could guess, that it comes from the biblical idea of Jesus having to carry his cross through the streets before he was finally crucified. So metaphorically, in modern English, if you bear a cross, it means you have to tolerate, to put up with something unpleasant or annoying, but you just have to do it. For example, listening to my noisy neighbors shouting every night is a cross I must bear. I don't like it, but I have to do it because they're my neighbors and they're not going to move and I have no choice. I just have to bear that cross.
And I think there's a similar expression in Spanish, because sometimes my Spanish wife says to me that I'm a cross she has to bear, which I thought was a compliment until now. Now I realize it's not. That she is actually bearing the consequences, which means to accept or to face the results of your actions. So consequences are something that you might have to bear. If you break the rules, for example, I'm sorry, you have to suffer. You have to bear the consequences.
Now, our next expression is something which is in the news a lot these days, particularly as regards the United States. We're talking about the right to bear arms.
Is that pulling up your sleeves?
No, it isn't. They're a type of arm, aren't they? That's true. But these arms are weapons, guns. Yeah. So in America, nobody minds what you do with your sleeves, and you show your bare arms,
Your
B-A-R-E.
bare skin.
But no, we're talking about guns here. So everybody knows quite frequently, sadly, compared to other countries, there are mass shootings and other incidents in America. So they're often debating the right, the legal right to bear arms, the legal entitlement, we could say, to own arms, or to be specific, firearms. Because a knife is also an arm, I guess, but we're talking really about firearms, arms that you can fire, guns. And many people insist it is my constitutional right to bear arms in America because it's written in the Constitution. It's true. But other people think it's time to change it. Oof, what a question. What a Pandora's box. I guess we'll have to talk about the rights and wrongs of that someday. But it's an expression, the right to bear arms, that you will hear very often if you read any news about America, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to say about that, but for today, we'll just leave you with that expression, the right to bear arms. Now, if someone does something bad to you, something nasty, something that really annoys you, would you bear a grudge against them? If you bear a grudge, Grudge, that means you hold a long-lasting resentment. You don't forget it. Someone's done something bad to you and you don't forgive them. For example, I don't bear any grudges against my ex-wife. Maybe against a few ex-girlfriends, but not against my ex-wife. Do you bear any grudges, Reza, against anybody?
I have borne a few grudges in my time. At the moment, I don't bear any that I'm aware of, but I admit I have. But for me, the circumstances that might make me bear a grudge are if somebody does something which they know they shouldn't have done to me, and it has negative consequences against me, and they don't care. That's when I might bear a grudge. But I'm perfectly happy to forgive and forget, So that's the opposite of bear a grudge. If the person recognizes they've done something wrong or shows some kind of regret, then not. But for people who know they've been bad, they know it's affected me, and they don't care, I might bear a grudge against them. I have to admit it. What about you?
I try not to bear grudges. I don't think it's a very positive thing to do, but sometimes, if it's really bad, if something really does bother me, if I'm hurt by someone's actions, then perhaps I might bear a grudge for a short time. And as quickly as possible, I try to forget it. Reza, has anybody ever told you that you bear a resemblance to a famous person?
Not to a famous person, no, but to a relative. I look quite similar to my older brother in a certain light. He's probably much better looking than me, but we have certain things in common. So I bear a resemblance to him. I couldn't say a striking resemblance. We quite often add the adjective striking to resemblance, and that means you look very, very similar. In fact, Craig, you bear a striking resemblance to George Clooney, may I say, Mr. Wheeland. Have you heard that said many times?
No, I haven't. Not even as a joke. Maybe we better put the lights on. No, I think I bear more of a resemblance to Mickey Mouse, to be honest, than George Clooney. Now, if you're driving and suddenly you arrive at a fork in the road, and a fork means...
No knife with the fork?
No knife, no, only a fork. No spoons. Meaning you can go towards the left or go towards the right. It's not exactly turn left. It's not exactly turn right. It's just that the road divides to the left and to the right. You can say, keep going and bear right, or bear left. So that means take a specific direction. Follow the road to the right or follow the road to the left. So bear right at the fork or bear left.
Next, we have a couple of phrasal verbs coming up. Just to refresh your memory, a phrasal verb is a verb which goes with a preposition, and the preposition has to always go with the verb. It isn't optional. It's part of the verb. We have the phrasal verb to bear up. So adding the word up means that it's not the same as without up. It means that you are managing something, you are coping with something, you can deal with it. People quite often say to you when you're ill or when something terrible has happened to you, they say, how are you bearing up? It means, how are you coping? How are you managing?
It can also be a typically British pessimistic greeting. It's like, Reza, how are you doing? How are you bearing up? It's kind of like if you ask a British person how they are, they might say, oh, not bad. Oh, could be worse. Mustn't grumble. You ask an American, they say, awesome, great. How are you, man? But yeah, we're more low key. So how are you bearing up? How are you managing with life? How are you bearing the burden of life on your shoulders? The next phrasal verb is to bear down on. So we've got a 3-word phrasal verb here. To bear down on means to put pressure or exert pressure or focus very intensely on something. Imagine there's a really violent storm. For example, you can say the storm began to bear down on the coastal areas, leading to evacuations of some of the people.
I think we've got one more, which could be literally physical or metaphorical. To bear the scars of something. A scar, S-C-A-R, is what you can see or what you can feel, if it's metaphorical, after you've had an accident or an unpleasant experience. So, for example, if you've had a major operation, and they've had to cut you open and then put you back together again. After they close the wound, there's a good chance you're going to have a scar. you're going to have a mark on your skin, which is a reminder of the serious and unpleasant operation you've had. Well, imagine that then metaphorically. Imagine a terrible thing has happened to you. For example, some major trauma. Imagine, you were involved in a terrible accident and saw lots of people die around you. You would probably have mental scars. So in your mind, there would be signs, there would be marks of this terrible thing that had happened to you. So if you bear the scars of something, it means that you show lasting signs or effects of this past experience. Can you think of an example, Craig?
Well, you could say she bore the scars of the accident, both physically and emotionally. So she had physical scars and she was affected emotionally by the accident. She bore the scars, bore there, of course, in the past, B-O-R-E. So those are our expressions with bear. Let's go back and review them very quickly. We had grin and bear it, bear with me, like a bear with a sore head, bear the brunt, bear in mind, can't bear the sight of, bear the load or bear the burden, bear fruit,
bear witness to, bear across, bear the consequences, the right to bear arms, to bear a grudge against someone, to bear a striking resemblance to someone, bear right or bear left, to bear up, to bear down on, and finally, bear the scars of.
Remember, to see these expressions and example sentences, go to the show notes for this episode, inglespodcast.com/507. But now it's your turn to practice your English. Who do you bear a resemblance to? Is listening to this podcast bearing any fruit for you? What is it important to bear in mind when you're studying English? Do you have a bear? Do you have a bear? Under the bed? Do you bear a grudge against anyone? We'd love to get a voice message from you practicing some of these expressions. Reza, how can people send us voice messages?
You can record your audio and leave it at speakpipe.com/Ingles podcast. But please bear in mind that there's a 90-second limit and it cuts off after then.
If you prefer to write, you can send us an email with a comment or question. Write to me, Craig, C-R-A-I-G, @inglespodcast.com. And to contact Reza, write to Belfast Reza, R-E-Z-A, @gmail.com.
If you're a Spanish speaker, as many of you are, and you want to study for free, yes, free, why not visit the Mansión Inglés website? And there's plenty of free material there. There are also paid ebooks and audios for self-study to check out on the online store. Go to store, S-T-O-R-E, .mansioningles.net.
And before we go out the door this week, we'd like to say a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. They are people who support the podcast, and for as little as $1.50 per month, you also get instant access to the transcriptions of this podcast, so you can listen and read every word that we say. For more information, go to patreon.com/InglesPodcast. Reza, who are our most recent Patreon supporters?
So a big thank you for joining the scheme to Josmar de Brito, Fran Otero, Oscar, David La Pietra, Juan, and Alejandro, who's paying more than the minimum. A big thank you to you guys and all the sponsors of the Patreon scheme.
Yes, thank you very, very much. Now, in next week's episode, we'll be back to speak about gradable and ungradable adjectives. So please bear with us while we explain some grammar to you next week. Until then, have a wonderful week. Thank you for listening this week. Until next time, it's goodbye from Reza.
And it's goodbye from Craig.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.